One potential Eurovision winner in a video is not enough, so we're going to talk about two today. And also Moldova. Before we get to that, if you haven't already, make sure you have subscribed to the channel. Make sure to like this video. Make sure to follow me and my editor Jay on Twitter. You can follow me on Instagram too. Last of all, we have the Patreon where you could see this video a day early. As I was recording this video, we hit 4,000 subscribers. So I just want to take a moment to say thank you all so much for your support, and it means the world to me and to Jay. Hopefully, we can keep doing you proud, keep producing content you want to see, and I'm so excited to see what the next months and years could bring. Now, with all that out the way, let's get right to it. We are starting today with Moldova, and I want to start by congratulating and praising our Lord and Savior, Tudor Bumbac. Tudor Bumbac is a Eurovision institution. He has entered this selection on 6 separate occasions and never once has he made it past the audition round. That said, that hasn't deterred our hero one bit. He keeps coming back and he keeps delivering bangers. Most importantly, Eurofans, including myself, were worried for his health after he didn't enter a song in 2023. So we're glad to see him on screen again, happy and well, and still delivering the good stuff. Welcome back, Tudor. And this year, Tudor didn't even come last. He beat out everyone's least favorite creep to finish only second last. Next year, Eurovision. The year after, he's winning the whole thing. The reason I've started with talking about Tudor is that Moldova has a beautiful institution in its national final that the only other place you can find it is San Marino, and that is the open auditions. We'll talk about San Marino another week, but for now, let's touch on some of the glory that is Moldova's open auditions. Anyone can come along and audition for this thing, and that gives us some absolute gems. So let's take a look at them quickly. Let's start with some of the most beautiful and deep lyrics that I have ever heard in my life. Let me just have a taste. None of you must go to waste. I want you deep inside of me. If you leave, something stays anyway. Unsurprisingly, this song, which was DNA by Sasha Letty, was branded the Come Song by Eurovision fans, and it made its way straight onto the iceberg, so if you come back in about 6 months, you get to hear me talk about this again. Another tiny piece of chaos was 2013 entrant Aliona Moon entering this selection, immediately rocketing to #1 on the Eurovision scoreboard app for this selection, and then withdrawing from the selection next day. No notes, 10 out of 10. Absolutely amazing work. One last highlight was this man who I have affectionately branded, "Your dad is handling the divorce really badly." About me tonight. I know this is like shooting fish in a barrel, but there were, of course, loads of people who couldn't even find a note. Anyway, it was amazing. I watched the whole thing, and what really added it to me was the fact that the stream kept crashing or was running at like 2 frames per second. To be honest, I actually think that's how these auditions were meant to be viewed. So thank you, Moldova, for this glorious, chaotic mess. As for the songs that made it to the actual show, it rapidly became a 2-horse race. Firstly, you had Valeria Pasha with her song Anti-Princess. Come to be brave, call my name Anti-Princess. This kind of has a bit of a "we have Billie Eilish at home" kind of chorus. It's extremely generic pop, and while there's nothing wrong with that, I would just like to see a little bit more creativity. Like, do something a bit more interesting. I also don't really know why, for the outfits, they've gone for Latvian pirates from Eurovision 2008. It really doesn't seem to fit the vibe for me. What really didn't make any sense to me at all was that the songwriting team for this included Juliana Parfeny, Pasha's wife, who also helped him write the song last year. I was a little bit sad to not see something more interesting here. Then we had Natalia Barbu with her song In the Middle. Natalia previously represented Moldova at Eurovision in 2007, and since then she's been busy, she's been releasing music. Some American magazine called her the sexiest woman in Moldova, so congratulations for that, I guess. As for this song, I don't really like it all that much. Unfortunately, it's a bit too slow to be danceable, but it doesn't quite have enough about it to get out of that generic pop classification that I also put anti-princess in. As a result, you sort of had a bit of a mid-off at the top of the final here. One thing I can say in favor of this song is that it does kind of have a staging concept already, in that you have the violins, you have the sort of hand dancing, and Natalia's voice, naturally, for such an experienced performer, is amazing. That said, those things alone do not a successful Eurovision entry make. As for the result, this is where things descended into chaos. Valeria Pasha comfortably won the televote, but Natalia Barbu won the jury vote. They each came second in the other one, so they both had 22 points out of a possible 24. What the organising committee decided to do, because there was no rule in place to break the tie, was just decide to send Natalia Barbu to Eurovision. And naturally, Valeria Pasha was not very happy about this. She complained, she takes to Instagram, the usual things, and it turns out that was a big mistake. For context here, there has long been a problem with alleged vote rigging in national finals. This is particularly true in countries where the broadcasters are maybe less well resourced, so they can't put safeguarding systems in place, and in countries with lower populations where you need fewer SIM cards, fewer phones to make an influence. Because of that, this is a problem that disproportionately affects countries in Eastern Europe like Moldova. Before this drama even kicked off, in the press conference after the show, Natalia Barbu explicitly accused Valeria Pasha and her team of buying votes. Like, that is amazing, and Natalia, you are an icon for doing that. Unfortunately for Valeria, the Moldovan broadcaster had implemented a new, more secure system for the televoting this year, and Valeria challenging the results meant they went public with what they found. 1/4 of Valeria's votes, so 950 votes, came from phone numbers that were invalid. Additionally, votes had been registered for her from places as far-flung as Barbados and Indonesia, Vietnam and Bangladesh. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm fairly sure there are not, like, legions of Bangladeshi Euro fans clamoring to get Valeria Pasha to Eurovision. In any case, with Valeria firmly put in her place and probably not getting invited back, we should talk about Natalia and her chances at Eurovision. And for me, unfortunately, this year, they are not good. You can never truly rule out Moldova because they do have a way of taking 2 Euros and a dream and somehow turning it into a great Eurovision result. Although, of course, now they don't have the help of Filip Kirkorov and his work to ensure good televote results. The problem is here, the song has left them with so little to work with. The hook just isn't strong enough. It lacks all of the character that made Soarele Shiluna and, God, I butchered that pronunciation, Soarele Shiluna and Trenelettel so popular, and without that, it's going to really struggle. It hasn't made a splash with Eurofans at all, and I think when the contest comes in May, it's going to struggle to make a splash with the general public as well. We're going to go from one end of the scoreboard to the other because we have 2 potential winners to talk about in this video. Firstly, it's time to talk about Ukraine. I know there have been people in the comments for weeks saying, when are you talking about Ukraine? When are you talking about Ukraine? I'm sorry it has taken me so long to get to it because I've been really excited to talk about this show, not just because of the winner, but also because I think what Ukraine is doing right now is amazing. We have to remember, this is a country literally in the middle of a war producing a national final that outsells most of the rest of Europe. It's heartbreaking, but also fascinating to see the way that the broadcaster is able to put together such a full national final around the threat of airstrikes and around the massive pressures that Ukrainians are facing in their day-to-day lives. Last year, that meant holding the final in an underground station, and this year, the performances, while live, were pre-recorded and then shown. So it was a kind of hybrid half-live thing. The results were fully live, but we'll come on to them in a minute. One other interesting, but maybe slightly zany feature of this national final is that the jury, who made up half the scores, were chosen by the public. There was an online vote, and in that they chose Jamala, Andrei Danilko, who you will probably know better as Verka Serduchka, and Sergei Tanchinets. Sergei is the frontman of the band Bez Obmijen. When it comes to song quality, to be honest, we can't go through the show and cover every single song that there's worth talking about because every single one of these 11 songs were so good. I've got an honorable mention, but I'm gonna cover the top 3. Firstly, we had Melovin with his song Dreamer, attempting to join the Eurovision Club of Sparkly Vests, which Slimane is already a member of. He previously participated in Eurovision in 2018 in Lisbon, and he was aiming to become the first Ukrainian participant to be in the contest twice. It's been a bit of a weird year for Moldovan, and one particularly strange incident was in December. He posted an Instagram story that suggested he had some kind of terminal illness. Now, we were relieved to find out shortly afterwards that he was talking about diabetes, which is obviously a debilitating condition, but because many of us were worried he was at death's door, it was quite a relief to find out that he at least had a condition that you can live with that is treatable, and we wish him all the best. As for the song, Dreamer is a kind of straight down the line club banger with some Eurovision style vocal acrobatics thrown in the mix. I've never seen that in Eurovision before. In all seriousness, this is actually a pretty good example of how to do this genre well. I mean, it's not as good as, say, Look Telk by Sylvester Belt, but you'll have to watch my last video if you want to find out more about that. All in all, it's a strong song, but I think what really elevated it into contention was Moldovan's vocals, which naturally were absolutely superb. The winner of the jury vote and second overall in this selection was Ziferblat with their song A Place I Call Home. For some reason, the jury compared them to the Beatles. I'm no musical expert, okay, but it seems a bit of a jump to compare this yassified Draco Malfoy to the Beatles. I could be wrong, and I'd be happy to be proven wrong. It just seems like a bit of a far-flung conclusion. On a more serious point, I think it's no surprise that this song did well, and I think a lot of that has to go down to the subject matter of the song. Home is obviously an extremely poignant matter for Ukrainians right now. Millions of Ukrainians are internally displaced or refugees, and even those that aren't started living in a new reality after February 2022. Home, as Ukrainians know it, is gone and could be gone forever. For that reason, I think there's a real emotional connection in this song that I felt as well when I was listening back to it to record this video. Overall, it was a strong effort, and they're a band I think we will probably see more of. Given how positive the jury was about them, I'd love to see them back in Vidbia again. Before we talk about the winner, there is one more song I want to talk about, and there is good reason for it. That is Glass by Nahaba. Why am I bringing this up? Firstly, I do genuinely think it's a banger, and I love the song just for what it is, but also, this is exactly the kind of thing I want to see more of in national finals. This is brave, it's out of the box, it's avant-garde, and I think a lot of countries could learn from what Ukraine is doing by putting these kinds of songs up for selection. It offers you something different, it offers you something that maybe you won't have come into contact with before. Even some of the biggest national finals, like Melodifestivalen, could learn from this kind of open-mindedness and out-of-the-box thinking. Without further ado, though, it's time to talk about the winner, and that was Teresa and Maria by Jerry Heil and Aliona Aliona. Can we talk about the 180-degree turn that Jerry Heil has taken? It doesn't seem like all that long we were in the vegan era. I remember watching that on TV that year. If you told me she was going to come along in a few years' time with something like this, I would have laughed in your face. Speaking seriously, because this is a contender to win Eurovision, I think it is so impressive the way that Jerry Heil and Aliona Aliona bring together traditional elements and hip-hop elements together to make this song really work. It's a combination of genre and a combination of performers that, on paper, shouldn't really go together so easily. It's the fact that they're so accomplished as musicians and the fact that this is such an amazing song that makes it work, and it's incredible to see. Firstly, Jerry Heil's voice is hauntingly beautiful. I would say you're probably unlikely to hear a better voice than this in Eurovision this year. It just gives you chills every time you hear this. People are going to really connect with that in May. Secondly, the way the song makes that possible with a sparse enough instrumentation and a slow enough pace that you can really accentuate those vocals, but also makes it fast enough, intense enough, driving enough to make the rap verses work. Again, amazing from these artists. And I have to say, Aliona Aliona's rapping is exactly the kind of tone that you need to make it accessible, to make it interesting to people who might usually be switched off by rapping in a song. One tiny piece of advice though, don't look up what her stage name used to be. While Jerry and Aliona did win the show, there was some controversy, and to be honest, Vidbir is known for this. It wouldn't be Vidbir without some controversy. I actually really love how Ukraine every year brings us an amazing song, but also manages to have some kind of exciting drama around the national final. There's always a conspiracy about the voting, or someone went to Crimea illegally, and all of these different things. And let's not get started about Maruf. The big problem this year was caused by the Dia app. Dia is essentially the government do-everything app in Ukraine. You can access documents, you can access government services, and since last year, it's also the place you go to vote during the show. Unfortunately, the app crashed. There was some speculation at the time that it could have been the target of a cyber attack from Russia. We know Russia has form for this kind of thing during Eurovision events. You may remember that Ternopil, which is the hometown of Tvorchi, was attacked by the Russians during their performance at Eurovision in 2023. However, the director of the Dia app confirmed it was simply the volume of people trying to vote. It overwhelmed the app, and so it crashed. The fallout from this was that voting ended up being extended an extra 24 hours until the next day. The line stayed open to give everyone the chance to vote. In the midst of the chaos, one of the participants, Skylar, announced she was withdrawing from the competition. Unfortunately for her, the competition organisers refused to let her withdraw. I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but at the results reveal the next day, she was there in the room, so they must have sorted it out. Once the results were over and done with, Moldovan decided to be very helpful by going on national TV and casting doubt on them. We have been through enough, Moldovan. Please, not this time. Just let it go. You came third. In any case, nobody can deny the massive endorsement that the Ukrainian public gave to Jerry and Alyona. At the end, when all was said and done, they had 720,000 votes. More than 600,000 above the second place. Now, I don't know about raw vote totals in national finals, but that has to be one of the biggest margins of all time. This song now has more than 40 million streams across all platforms. Such is the impact of this that it has rocketed way up in the odds. It currently sits in second place, just behind the song we're going to talk about in a minute. As for my opinion, do I think it could win Eurovision? Yes. At this moment in time, do I think it will? I'm going to say probably not. I think top 5 is pretty likely. And I'm sorry, Ukrainians, that my hopes are limited there rather than saying it's the favourite or anything else. I just think it's going to fall just short, and I'll explain why. Like I said, the song is really impactful, and some of the elements of the staging, such as the drifting veil in the background, are really poignant. It makes it special, and like I say, I think this song is amazingly well put together. The one thing I'm just missing is, after all the build-up, I want a slightly bigger finish, and it never quite comes for me. There's time to fix this, and it might be that they do something with it before Eurovision, but right now, that is what we are missing. What that means now, though, is that while Ukraine is on path for another really strong result, I don't think that fourth win is quite going to come this year. Will it in the near future? If Vidbir stays this good, it definitely will. So Ukraine, don't change anything. Keep doing what you are doing. We're going from one favourite to another because now it's time to talk about Croatia. I have been so excited to talk about this song. I have been chomping at the bit because I've had to wait a couple of weeks to talk about it, but now it's time, so let's get to it. We could be witnessing one of Eurovision's greatest fairy tale stories. To guide you through that, I'm first just going to go through a couple of side notes about Dora, which is the national selection in Croatia. The first thing to mention is the return of Let3, who of course participated last year with their song Mama's Cha. This year they returned with Baba Roga. I don't really know where to start with this because Let3 spent the whole build-ups to the show running this elaborate PR campaign where they claimed they had nothing to do with the song and that there were malicious actors involved and that they were being kidnapped by the Baba Roga and all of this stuff was going on. They then delivered a performance where one of them is pretending to play a ukulele. There's a series of dances with dwarfism, which left me feeling a bit weird about whether this was exploitative. And then, for reasons that escape me, 2 minutes in, Croatian megastar Severina appears on stage with a giant hammer. Oh, and don't forget, they start taking their clothes off because it's Let3. Of course they do. The song was actually quite catchy and the vocals were pretty good live in spite of the terrible Dora sound engineering. That said, this song just didn't quite have the charm that Mama's Cha did, and the Croatian public, in turn, did not get on board with it in the same way. Regarding what I was saying about vocals, I feel like weekly rants about sound engineering are starting to become my brand, so I'm gonna spare you the worst of it this week. That said, I am gonna question some of the slightly weaker vocals in this selection. All of that aside, let's tell the story through the eyes of Baby Lasagna with Rim Tim Taggy Dim, who won the show and could be on his way to win Eurovision. Starting from the start, this song was the first reserve for Dora. That meant that of the 24 participants in this show, the selection jury thought that Baby Lasagna's song was the 25th best. Naturally, this means that he wasn't even meant to be performing in the show. He only got the call up a month before when another performer, Zaza, probably pronounced that wrong, never mind, withdrew from the contest at the last minute. All his competitors had already been working on their performances. They knew they were in the show. He gets a call out of the blue with 1 month to do everything. This was where the controversy started, because when Baby Lasagna's song was released, everyone already knew it was the reserve. And it was so obviously a class above everything else in the national final that it immediately sparked outrage. HRT, the Croatian broadcaster, are not the first and won't be the last to go through this kind of controversy, but this one felt particularly egregious. It was hugely embarrassing for the broadcaster to have a reserve entry come in and so immediately and so obviously be the best song in the field. After the final, the Croatian media had an absolute field day with this. The calls to resign to the organisers came in thick and fast. While Baby Lasagna clearly had the strongest song, there are still a lot of obstacles in the way for him. Firstly, Baby Lasagna had never appeared as a solo artist on TV in his life. He had appeared as a backing singer and guitarist in a band in Dora some years ago, but nothing like this. His career is only just starting, and Rim Tim Taggy Dim was meant to be an album track on his debut release. He sent it into Dora, he essentially forgot he'd done it afterwards, and it was clear in the performance that some of these nerves that he must have had were really showing. Starting from an absolute standstill, especially in the semi-final, which was his first live performance ever, you could tell he was having a little trouble getting the energy out and putting the song across to the public. That semi-final performance was where the anxiety started to creep in for me, because he wasn't quite hitting his marks. He wasn't looking into the camera when he was meant to. The mic was being held too far from his face, which meant every now and then you couldn't hear what he was saying. These issues are fixable, but in the immediate term, it was quite scary and quite worrying to see. Naturally, he went through to the final. There was never any doubt about that. But it meant that when Saturday came, we were scared. We were worried. Who knew what we were going to see that night? The pressure was on for Baby Lasagna to silence his critics, and that is exactly what he did in Saturday's final. Every element of this performance was improved. The vocals were more on point. He was hitting his marks with the dancers. There was much better eye contact with the camera. Baby Lasagna said himself that he was so overexcited during the first performance that he simply forgot about a lot of those things. On Saturday, you could see he was more focused, he was more professional, and it just shows he's going to keep improving all the time between now and May. It's incredible to say this, but Croatia could win Eurovision, and Baby Lasagna could be the artist to do it for them. And let's think about, for a minute, how amazing a story that would be. Not even meant to be in the national final, with a song that was an album track that he never meant to be a flagship release, without even realizing the potential that he himself had, getting drafted in at the last minute after a late dropout, having never performed solo on TV in his life, with a song that he wrote, that he produced, that he mastered by himself in his bedroom, and then winning the national final with 4 times as many points as anyone else, more than 50% of the total televote points available. And after that, becoming the bookies' favourite for Eurovision. It does just keep getting better and better. But now, growing as a performer, smashing that show in May, and winning Eurovision for his country for the first time as an independent nation, that's a Disney movie. Right now, if I was going to put money, and I'm not a betting man, if I was going to put money on a winner, this is what I would bet on. The song is catchy and accessible. There are clear influences from bands like Rammstein. Some have talked about the similarity with Cha Cha Cha, although we should say Kärja himself has endorsed this song and said while he sees the similarities, he thinks they're really different. What this song also has is shades of pop as well. The lyrics are simple and quirky and fun and easy to remember. The phrase Rim Tim Taggy Dim is of course an earworm that will get straight into viewers' heads. But also, this song tells a really important story that a lot of people are going to relate to. Young people now, almost always outside of the big cities, have to leave their home, have to leave their families to seek opportunities in the big city. Young people in Spain flocking to cities like Madrid or Barcelona. In Britain, you see it with people moving to London. In the Balkans, you see it with people flocking to big cities in the region, like Zagreb, or moving abroad, seeking a better life in another country. This song resonates with me too, because I live hundreds of miles away from my parents. I miss them very much. My brother lives in another country. I feel the things and I feel the anxiety that this song is trying to create. And I know that people like my parents and parents everywhere who miss their kids, who miss their families, who have moved away for these opportunities are going to relate to this song too. Croatians love this song, not just because it's a banger, but because it tells the story of many of their lives. It does it in an accessible way that you can understand the first time you listen to it. And it's funny and quirky, so some people are just going to vote for it because it's a fun song. Overall, you have the song. You have this massive potential for the stage show and for the artist. You have the narrative and the underlying story that can be so important in leading to a winning moment. This song has everything. Rim Tim Taggy Dim is the #1 contender right now to win the Eurovision Song Contest. At the time of recording, we still have 6 or 7 songs to come, so it's worth bearing in mind. Maybe that could change. But I wouldn't be surprised at all to see this at #1 in the betting odds going into the week of the contest. We could well be dancing on the streets of Zagreb in 2025, and I would love to see you all there. For now, though, there is a lot of hard work that Baby Lasagna and his team need to get through, and let's hope they get the result they deserve. With that, that is another 3 songs in the bag. We're doing something a little bit different next week. I realized I have quite a lot to say about Melody Festivalen this year, so we're going to do a review video just on that. One other thing I just want to mention that I announced on Twitter this week. I've been receiving a lot of questions about whether I'm going to review Azerbaijan and Israel's songs in this series. I've decided that in my video about those countries that I already did, I've said everything I really want to say. So I've chosen not to review those songs. If you do want my thoughts on anything Israel and Azerbaijan related, I would direct you to my video where I talk about how I feel they are exploiting Eurovision. In the meantime, thank you so much for tuning in as always. Thank you so much for 4,000 subscribers, which we hit this week. And I'll look forward to seeing you at that Melfest video in 7 days. For now, take care.